All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the Committee on Adjudication to consider a recommendation on the organization, management, and operation of agency adjudication offices. I'm Leah Robbins, serving as staff counsel for this project, and I'm joined by the project consultant, Professor Jennifer Coe, and committee chair, Nadine Mancini. So before calling roll, I will turn it over to Research Director Jeremy Grayboys to say a few welcoming words.
Well, I will only say a very few words. I'll be mighty brief. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you all here to discuss, as Leah said, organization, management, and operation of agency adjudication offices, an understudied but critically important aspect of how agencies manage caseloads, especially large caseloads, efficiently and effectively. Look forward to our discussion here today. Thank you, of course, to our consultant, Professor Coe, staff counsel Leah Robbins, and Nadine Mancini. And with that, Leah, hand it back to you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to call roll. As always, I will call two rolls. The first will be the names of committee members and alternates of committee members. So after each name is called, please just say here so that we know your mics are working. Nadine?
Here.
Thank you. Jack Bierman?
Here.
Jack? Hi, Feldblum?
Here.
Thank you. Hi. Amanda Adams, alternate for Stephanie Gorman?
Here, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Susan Grunman?
Here, good to be back.
Glad to have you. All right. Andrew Vandenover, alternate for Adam Kress?
Here.
True. Robert Lesnick?
Here.
Thank you for joining. Roxanne Rothschild? Catherine Smith?
Here.
Thank you. Russell Wheeler?
Here.
And I think that's it joining us now. We have a handful of committee members that will be joining a little late at various times, so just FYI on that. But is there any committee member present whose name I did not call? Okay, great. So the second roll I will call are the names of ACUS members who are not on the committee and their alternates. Again, after your name is called, please just say here. I will note that I will not be calling the names of any members of the public who are in attendance. Members of the public do not have speaking privileges, so if you would like to speak, please indicate so in the chat and just wait to be acknowledged. So I'll start with the project consultant, Jennifer Coe.
Here.
Thank you. And Amy Roseman Orr, alternate for Helen Serasio.
Here.
Thank you, Amy. All right. Is any other ACUS member present whose name I did not call? All right, then Nadine, I'll just turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Leah. It's great to see everybody. I'm going to start off before I go through the ground rules, many of which you already know, but we're going to go through them quickly. I need to end the meeting at 3:30, so we're going to be as robust in our discussion as we can be between now and then. I will still promise you a break. We'll get that in, and then we have our second meeting in 2 weeks if we have anything remaining to cover. So ground rules. Please note that only ACUS members, including government members and their designated alternates, public members, senior fellows, liaison representatives, and special counsels, whether or not on the committee, and their designated alternates have full speaking privileges, meaning that a non-ACUS member should write in the chat if you would like to speak. To avoid background noise, please keep your microphone on mute and use either the hand raise feature or add a comment in the chat feature if you would like to speak. I'll call on you, you can say your piece, and then you can unmute, remute as needed. I'd also ask that ACUS members and their designated alternates use their webcam if at all possible. It's helpful for us to see each other during our conversation and discussion. With respect to attendees other than ACUS members and alternates, participation requires the unanimous consent of committee members. Time permitting, I will consider calling on such attendees at appropriate points. We will presume that committee members consent, absent raising an objection. If any such participant would like to speak, please indicate in the chat feature or use the hand raise function and wait to speak until I call on you. You can unmute and then remute when you're done. For all participants, please use the chat function only to indicate that you would like to speak. Please do not hold any sidebar discussions or put substantive comments in the chat features. That's not captured as part of our discussion and deliberation. Okay, I am going to turn things over to Jennifer. I want to flag for you that she is a law professor at Pepperdine Caruso School of Law. Her bio is quite impressive. You can Google her quickly if you want to find out about all of the wonderful things she has done. I'm really looking forward to hearing from her. This report is great. And I'm not saying that just because Osherick was a case study in the report. Jennifer, all over to you now.
Great. Well, thank you, Nadine. Thank you all for having me today. And thank you for your service to the government, either current or former. I wanted to say that in light of the earlier conversation. So this report studies the organization, management, and operation of agency adjudication offices, as you know. The focus is on offices that provide hearings either through ALJs or administrative judges, or that conduct appellate review of such hearings. It addresses questions like how are those offices organized, both with respect to the broader agency as well as internally as an office. How is management structured? What management tools are used both organizationally and practically on a day-to-day level to encourage transparent, timely, accurate, and fair adjudication? How are those offices resourced and operated? And so while various ACUS reports have considered dimensions of these questions, ACUS has not directly addressed these questions for about 30 years. Like many ACUS reports, the findings are based on both based on public information as well as interviews, and are based on case studies of 9 different agencies, which collectively reflect about 15 adjudication offices. Many, but not all of the agencies have both hearing and appellate level review. And as mentioned, in addition to the publicly available information, we conducted a total of 17 interviews to support those case studies. A majority were with current agency officials, but several also included former agency officials, as well as representatives of stakeholder organizations. So I thought it would be just helpful to kind of list again what those agencies are. They are Health and Human Services, the Executive Office for Immigration Review at the Department of Justice, focusing on non-citizen removal, the Department of Labor, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the National Labor Relations Board, the Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission, thank you, Nadine, Social Security Administration, and the United States Postal Service. So as you can already imagine, these agencies reflect considerable variation, even in terms of what these broader agencies are, much less the adjudication offices. The list includes very large cabinet level agencies, as well as smaller and independent ones. It includes agencies in which the adjudicatory functions are really central to the broader mission of the agency itself, as well as agencies in which adjudication is a relatively small component in comparison to the broader function and mission of the agency. Most people don't associate the Postal Service with adjudication. It intentionally includes some of the largest adjudication offices and systems in the country, SSA, BVA, immigration, which involve national level leadership, as well as dozens, if not more than 100 in some cases, of local offices or courts in which hearings take place. It includes agencies that are led effectively by the appellate review bodies, thinking of NLRB and Osherick, and again, as well as very small offices, those that have less than 10, in the case of transportation, just 2 adjudicators. Some of those offices focus on fairly discrete subject matter, think Social Security benefits, whereas other offices have broad jurisdiction over really dozens of statutes, in the case of the Department of Labor, for example. So the report explores how the nature of the broader agency impacts where and how adjudication offices fit into the agency's overall hierarchy. It pays relatively, even greater attention to how those adjudication offices are structured internally. For both hearing level and appeals level offices, it examines, for example, different types of organizational and leadership structures, how those structures impact who the head of the adjudication office is, the proximity of the head of the office to the head of the agency, the layers of management, the implications of placing different adjudication offices within one broader office. It considers who management officials are, in particular, whether they are adjudicators, such as chief ALJs or chief judges, who often bring direct adjudication experience and are often career officials, versus directors who are not adjudicators, but bring strong policy commitments and may bring strong management experience. It also considers the roles of chairs and chief judges in the context of appellate review bodies. The report discusses a range of management tools used by those adjudication offices and management officials, including agency manuals and written rules, the use of data analytics, quality assurance initiatives, performance appraisal, management strategies with respect to legal support personnel, and peer feedback, to name a few. And I'll just end by noting, when we think of adjudication, we naturally think of the adjudicatory process of rendering decisions. The report also acknowledges the necessity of operational support in order for adjudication to happen, who should be in charge of operations, and how those support components are organized. In the end, given the variation that exists even across the 9 agencies that we studied, the draft recommendations really encourage agencies to engage in evidence-based evaluations of their organizational management and operational practices, and to act based on that evidence and data that is specific to each agency, but of course with broader goals of transparency, efficiency, fairness, and quality in decision-making in mind. So with that, I'll conclude. Again, thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to the discussion and welcome any questions on the report as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. On that note, before we jump into the recommendation itself, are there any questions for Jennifer about the report?
Can I just ask a general question? I'm sorry. This is way out of my wheelhouse of anything I know anything about. So I'm just curious about what provoked this as a project. Is this something that we feel like there's sort of disorganization in adjudicatory organization, the way that different agencies handle their adjudicatory systems? Is it opaque, so you can't tell what's going on? I'm not going to be able to give any substantive commentary at all on anything on this project. I did read it for my usual grammar and stuff, but I'm just wondering, like, I'd be interested to hear like that sort of a statement about that.
So I feel like I'm going to direct that question over to Leah and Jeremy, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simplest thing is that these sorts of topics have come up in lots of recent projects related to adjudication, whether we're talking about how adjudication processes work, what resources are available to adjudicators, how appellate review works. Questions of organization, management, and operation have come up again and again, which led us to warrant that further study was necessary, given how important these topics are, given how sort of understudied they are, especially among sort of lawyers who haven't worked in these systems.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add too that I think these questions are coming up a lot in the recent months even. So I think that having a set of best practices when agencies are reorganizing or looking at their structures and things like that, I think it's just a very timely topic too. So
Okay.
Hi.
So 2 things. Number one, in just response to Jack's question, it sort of seemed to me as if there was a lot of stuff. I mean, you list in the report 10, sort of things of previous ACUS engagements. So to me, it felt like a lot of this was just pulling it together because you would have things about operations or management. So I think, and hopefully, Jack, that means that there will be fewer substantive, tough issues because it really is sort of pulling it together. But I think that can be useful for agencies. I had, though, two questions before delving into just the, specifics. So in the footnote, you said that the recommendation does not address components that issue frontline decisions that are subject to further review in a de novo agency proceeding before an administrative law judge, AJ, etc. Can you just explain what are those types of decisions? What are you meaning by frontline? Because obviously you are still, this is about once it goes up to one of those agencies. So just what was that distinction?
Yeah, I mean, if it helps, if we think about like how broad the definition of adjudication technically is, right? It can be like anything from, when you go through the TSA checkpoint and to, right, or just any kind of determination that is made. So it was recognizing that when we say adjudication office, many people could think of those kinds of frontline decisions that don't necessarily take place in sort of a hearing-like setting, but are nonetheless made by agency officials to decide on a discrete sort of question that involves a claimant or between parties and the government. So kind of thinking of the typology of like type A adjudications referring to ALJ decisions and type B to hearing like decisions not before an ALJ, but like everything else being type C, because that universe of adjudications would be so broad. I think the decision had been made to set those aside and really focus on hearing like decisions as well as review of those hearing decisions rendered in hearing settings.
Yeah, so that makes complete sense to me. And we just might want to think about whether that sentence can be a little more clear, because it almost sounds like we're not going to do these even when they have an appeal. So, I mean, it was just something that struck me. So,
Okay. Okay.
and my
Thank
second
you.
question is, in all of those reports, has ACUS ever said anything substantively about whether in performance metrics there should, actually, I'm going to stop on that. Let's get to that section of the recommendation about performance metrics. So,
Great.
Nadine, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll dive in to the recommendation. If don't know that there are any other questions for Jennifer, thank you for those. I would like to start with the preamble with maybe a quick and light touch, knowing that as we go through the recommendations, we may need to swing back to the preamble. Just experience teaches us that to tweak things further. So it would be helpful if we could move quickly through the preamble. I think most of the proposed comments and changes appear in the recommendations themselves. So we will start at the beginning with the first paragraph. I don't think we had anything pre-submitted for this, and I'm not sure that there's anything else, but if anybody has anything, now's your time. Hi. Yep.
One very tiny thing. I don't know if one, and just because I'm coming from EOC, where they were called administrative judges as opposed to Office of Administrative Law Judges. These all seem to be the offices. So I'm not sure if it fits here, but if at some point we can also say administrative judges, because I think that's, there are a lot of agencies that don't have ALJs, but have AJs.
So you would include that on the list there on lines 5?
Yeah, except that now that I'm looking at it, all of it is the offices as adjudication offices. So it doesn't belong there, but let's just keep it in mind if it does.
Okay, and I didn't mean to ignore your comment earlier about footnote 1, which I think you're suggesting that maybe some adjustments should be made to that last line of footnote 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything specific in mind there, or?
I I don't, but I can take a look afterwards, but
Okay,
I
okay.
trust.
All Okay, we can, yep, Leah's read my mind. We'll put a comment there. You're on it. Okay, let's move on to the second paragraph then. There is, Jeff had just what I view as kind of a stylistic minor change there. I'm not sure it's worth covering that. He's not here anyways, and I don't know that he'd have a lot to say about it. But anything in this second paragraph that runs from line 6 to 21? Yeah. There's an edit in the last line there. I think that's from Russell though. Was that from Russell? This is, yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Russell, or is it pretty self-explanatory?
It's self-explanatory.
Great. Any thoughts on second paragraph? Okay, we'll move on to third paragraph, which we didn't have anything on that one. Oh, Jack had semicolons.
Yeah, there are a couple of lists in this
Uh-huh.
where there seems like long lists of things with semicolons, and as a matter of style, I think commas are the correct way to do it, but I don't really care that much. I just
Yeah.
thought it was more readable with commas.
Anybody have a strong sense of commas versus semicolons here? We can leave that for committee on style. Yep. Anything else? Any other points here on paragraph 3? Next paragraph. And or Jack keeps us honest on these. This is not a new thing. You definitely focused our attention on that in the past. And I think Russell caught an edit at the last line. Was it its versus is there? Yeah.
For consistency with agencies.
Absolutely. Good catch. Anything else in that paragraph? Jack has a footnote. Footnote. Oh, about was this about the FOIA?
Yeah, I think that was part of Section 3 of the original APA, which I don't know. Sometimes you see it called Public Information Act, but I don't think it was part of the Freedom of Information Act. Was something that expanded 552 later on, I think, in the codification. I'm not 100% sure of that, but that's what it, because I went back and looked at the original APA, which didn't include the Freedom of Information Act, and this provision was already in there. So I think you just say the administrative, say, you don't need to, I think just take out Freedom of Information Act.
Which is at line 30. Yeah, right there.
I would say the Administrative Procedure Act instead of.
Jack, how about 5 USC 552, and then we can avoid whether it's FOIA or the APA.
I couldn't put a section symbol in
could-
there and
You could also just eliminate it and just say additionally agencies are required to, and then the site speaks for itself.
It's good to have, well, if there's a citation, remind me, the citation is to 552. Yeah, that would be fine also. Either way. I just don't think it's right to say Freedom of Information Act, because the Freedom of Information Act is only about stuff that people can request. It's not about stuff that the agency is required to publish on its own.
Got it. Any thoughts on that or anything else in this paragraph? Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, please.
Sorry, I don't know if it's germane to this, but just following what Jack said, the Freedom of Information Act does require agencies to affirmatively publish certain information, such as its final orders and decisions. So
Are you sure that's in the Freedom of
but
Information Act, or was that in the APA originally?
I don't know if it's in the APA originally, but it's certainly considered part of the FOIA now. Just functionally speaking from an agency that it's on.
So maybe, again, rather than
Yeah.
labeling it one way or the other, we just let the sites speak
Yes,
for themselves.
because when
Yeah.
552, when the Freedom of Information Act was codified, it was shoved into 552. So it's impossible
Was.
to see from the text what's actually part of the Freedom of Information Act and what's part of the original
APA.
APA or other. There were other amendments to the APA that also were shoveled. Some of them were shoveled into 552, and then the whole thing was repassed at some point. So it's a conglomeration of a bunch of different statutes. So it's safer to just call this, I guess, the statute number. And I would only call the parts where people can request stuff, the Freedom of Information Act. And I think you can get that separately, you know, as in a package without the other things, but it's not important.
Okay. So next paragraph, the nonetheless paragraph, we have an and or, semicolons versus commas. And then footnote 10, there's a comment from Jeff, deleting reference to a particular prior AGUS recommendation. Any thoughts on any of those or anything else in this paragraph?
Just a thought.
Yeah, Susan.
Yeah, so, and you probably got this from talking to the NLRB. A lot of their adjudication structures are based on statute, and there's almost no discretion at all on how they implement it. You know, so I'm comparing the two places I worked with MSPB. There was plenty of discretion. I'm interested to see what Pi has to say, but with the FLRA and the NLRB, there's none. Everything is by the statute.
Susan, are you concerned then about that first line where we say retain significant discretion?
Yeah. Maybe you want to say something like, nonetheless, certain statutory construction may give certain agencies discretion.
Hi, she called you out. You have any thoughts?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think that's right, obviously, but yeah, I think that's fine, actually, to say statutory discretion may give statutory provisions may give agencies significant discretion. I mean, for example, I do actually think that a lot of the stuff that's in here about management, organization, there probably is discretion as opposed to, you know, statutory or regulatory, you know. But I think that makes sense to just make that clear.
And it also goes back to, you know, delegations, right? In some statutes, all adjudicatory functions delegate from the head of the agency. In some, they're completely walled off, completely separate.
Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
am I saying that correctly, Amy?
yes, it is. It's Amy.
Okay.
And let me turn my camera on. I just wanted to point out that some adjudicatory bodies, like the Environmental Appeals Board at the EPA, are created not by statute, but by regulation. And so when you say statutory provisions may give significant discretion, it's not, it's limiting it to statutorily created bodies.
So statutory and regulatory.
Yes, thank you, because I was thinking about that, because in the EOC, most of it is regulation as opposed to, there's a little in the statute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further here? Okay, we are down to the last paragraph. Anything here? For the moment. Again, just reminding we can always go back to this. But we can say we've been through it once. Okay, so let's jump into the recommendation. Jeff is not here to speak to his comment. his concern is that appellate offices are perhaps not being represented throughout. I just will note that, you know, the adjudication offices is defined right out of the gate in the first paragraph. And I think that it makes it clear that we are including appellate offices. So to the extent that they seem to be either missing or it's written in a way that they're missing, I think that's just something to keep in mind as we go through.
And Nadine, I will say
Yeah.
that there are some specific edits in the recommendations below to address this concern, because it
Right.
definitely was inadvertent to not include
yeah.
appellate offices as
Yeah, account for them, yeah.
in the yes, in the definition of adjudication offices. So but this is just, I guess, like you said, let's just keep that in
Keep
mind.
it in mind.
Through. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Leah. Okay. The next one is the heading. This is Russell. Russell, do you want to speak to this quickly?
Oh, no, I was just flagging there that I had a variety of comments about 1 through 3, that's all.
Okay.
And then my first comment shows up under A.
Do you want to go ahead and talk about that
Well,
one?
if it seems to me, policymakers want to know about, just not only the type and volume, they want to know about backlog.
Mhm.
You know, typically it's what percentage of pending cases have been pending more than 6 months or whatever it is, but that's an important variable, and there ought to be the recommendation ought to indicate that it knows that agencies should capture that one way or the other.
Okay. Any thoughts on that, including Jennifer, if you had anything from the report to add to that, or no? It's fine if you don't. Please feel free to weigh in if there's something illuminating from the report on that issue. Any
I
other
mean,
thoughts?
certainly case backlogs are a
Yeah,
tremendously high priority for many agency offices, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I have much more to add on that front.
great, thanks. Okay, anything under one? I know we talked about 1A, 1B, C or D. And we'll get to
1E,
Yeah.
1E, I had variety of comments there. I mean, typically, when you're looking at this, you know, time it takes variable, it's something like median time or mean time from filing to termination. E, as written, it doesn't really distinguish between elapsed time and consumed time. It's not clear whether you're looking, you know, for example, a case is filed in, you know, July 1 and it's terminated in November 1. Well, elapsed time is what, 3 months, but the adjudicator is obviously not, in the words of the recommendation, that's not the time it takes for the adjudicator to do those things, because they maybe work on it intermittently. So I think that needs a rewording, perhaps along the lines I've suggested, or perhaps even cleaning it up a little more. And it also seems to combine two variables. One is time, and the other is quality of decision. And I don't know how an information system. It's two different kinds of inquiries to capture those things. If you're looking at elapsed time, it's filing determination. If you're looking at consumed time, then you get into things like time studies and you know, keeping track of hours, things that adjudicators hate to do. And then also, who is going to determine? And maybe I'm just being naive here. Who's going to determine whether the determination was legally sufficient and policy compliant? Is that the data collector's job, or is that a separate activity? And I don't know quite how to fix it, because I'm not entirely sure of the answer to that question, but I did suggest that a different way to describe the time variable, to make sure you're talking about elapsed time, unless you're talking about consumed time, then you get into recommendation 2 and the different kind of data which that need to be collected.
Jennifer, did you have any thoughts on this one, in terms of what we're trying to capture here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the intent in focusing on review of a case file to writing of a decision was intended to sort of narrow the time frame, right? Because between filing and review of a file, all kinds of sort of things can happen, delays can exist.
True.
And to really kind of focus on that core piece of like what we think of as the adjudication itself and like the work
Yeah.
that decision writers and adjudicators do. I hear the comment about how E kind of raises a number of issues, right, by injecting a quality decision into that calculus. I think part of the sentiment behind putting, I guess I would sort of think of that as like an assumption behind the measurement of the time that sort of like, of course, the goal would be to think of this as a sufficient decision and not simply one that is, you know, like produced in order to meet a
Produced, yeah.
constraint. I don't know if that's helpful, and I see
Yeah,
Jeremy.
no, that's helpful. Jeremy, we'll go to you first and then back to Russell.
I was just going to note there are two prior recommendations, one on timeliness and adjudication and one on quality assurance and adjudication, that both describe data points that agencies should capture to assess timeliness and quality of decisions. I mean, one option is just to sort of incorporate those by reference here, if that would be useful. So we're not relitigating some of those items already discussed in previous projects.
Russell?
Oh, that's fine with me. I think as written, though, I find it quite confusing. That's my only point. I think it needs to be more precise.
I will say, yeah, go ahead.
No, unless the data keeping is precise enough to capture case filed, adjudicator on such and such a date begins review, adjudicator ends review another date. I mean, unless it's sophisticated enough to catch that, you're not going to get what's called the time it takes for an adjudicator to do those things, because I presume they're not done all at once. I mean, almost by definition, they couldn't be done all at once. You read the file and then put it aside, and then there's a hearing. I mean, you get my drift. And if Jeremy thinks that the other recommendations are precise on more precise on that matter, I certainly am not going to insist on my language. I just think the way it's written, someone coming to it as I did, sort of cold, would be wondering, what is this all about?
Hi.
So I agree with Russell that it makes sense to just divide this into like an O and an F, specifically because we do have the other recommendations. And that was certainly my thought. I was reading and thought, I think I remember a recommendation about either quality or timeliness. So, so I think it makes sense to like have an E and an F, E on timeliness, F on quality. If in terms of E, the difference between the average time it takes for, by case type for them to write a decision, and so I would just say write a decision, because F will be in terms of the quality. And I think, Jennifer, on your point, we are sort of going to assume that that was a legally sound, policy compliant decision. But I don't know, to be honest, I think mean or median is probably better, but I don't know if it's going to freak out agencies. So if it says as referenced in that first one, E, to even write a decision, comma, as referenced in our timeliness recommendations, let's maybe just see whether we said average there or we said mean or median. I mean, mean or median is obviously better, but I think it can freak some people out. And then I don't remember what we said on quality, but I'm sure that was difficult to measure. So even though I'm suggesting a different F, assuming we want to put quality, by the way, in this. So let me just sort of step back a second and look at this data.
I'm trying to come up with, I'm trying to look for my hand raising and I can't. So I'm only getting thumbs up. So I apologize. Let me throw out another word and have you guys digest it. What about process? I mean, we're not talking about quality, we're talking about the time it takes to process a case from start to finish.
I will say, when I've read this, I was thinking, are we looking at the entire decisional process, or are we looking at what Jennifer's referring to as a narrower, what I think of as the back end of the process, which is, you may have pleadings and discovery and all sorts of things that happen before the hearing, and then the hearing, and then it's really when the adjudicator is going to sit down, look at everything, and actually draft something. So it seemed to me that we were trying to capture that narrower piece of the decisional process.
Well, and the other thing you get into in terms of quality is if you get a change of, philosophy in the agency or a change of philosophy in the courts, that's not the adjudicator's fault. They're following the precedent that was there. Now the precedent's changed, not their fault.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Amy.
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts I just wanted to throw into the discussion. One is, I think that when you're talking about performance metrics and time in particular, it might be worth being as broad and general as you can, because I think different adjudicative bodies are going to have different performance metrics that they have to meet, and those can change over time. And so I think you need to give agencies the opportunity to interpret what is meant by a timely decision. And then just kind of, I think, getting back to what Jennifer was saying, the reason that I see, and I agree that quality is totally different from time in terms of what you're talking about, but it's hard to talk about a time metric without thinking about, what we're saying is always assumed to be a decision of high quality or legally sound or error-free. I mean, I just think there's a lot of different ways to describe what a quality decision is, and the more narrow you make it, the less room you give for individual interpretation. So I would be careful. I think I saw the word accuracy quite a few times in the report itself, and that kind of goes along with it. An accurate decision implies that I'm not sure what that means exactly. So I just think I think broad terms would be good to include.
Anybody else on this? Russell, you still have yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I don't even want to be in a position of have the person collecting data to make judgments about the quality of the decision. If there's some
fair.
independent measure of that, some independent indication, review by appellate, I don't know what it would be, but then you can have percentage of terminations regarded by X, what the official determiner is, that were judged to be adequate, but keep it separate. One thing you're looking at is how long it takes the adjudicator to do stuff. That's either elapsed time or consumed time, as I said before, and they're not the same. The other is the quality of the decision itself, and I think it just confuses things to put them in the same place.
Yeah. Hi.
So I wanted to speak because I want to, pull back on, based on the conversation from the recommendation I suggested before of separating it out. And instead, I would say for E, based on this conversation, especially when you're judging the time from, I would, Russell, not go with what you added, since you added from filing. I would suggest going back to the average time it takes for adjudicators or support personnel to review a case file and write. And then based on what people are saying, I think it's fine to say, and this was where I landed, to write a legally sound and policy compliant decision as referenced in, and then you just reference both the timeliness and the quality recommendations. We all know that the way we're going to figure out legally sound and policy compliant is by the, percentage of overturning of those decisions, so I really did not, the point about not saying quality, and Amy, if I'm understanding you correct, you would rather have something broad like legally sound and policy compliant as opposed to a sort of undefined word as quality. So then that's what I would say, let's do legally sound and policy compliant, let's use that, and then we reference it. We reference the timeliness and quality recommendations that I know we spent a bunch of time on.
I was going to just throw out issue instead of right, but I'll turn it to Catherine too, please.
Well, I like issue instead of right, and my comment was going to be twofold. One, that I also agree that legally sound is probably the best metric in various ways, and open to a lot of interpretations. And that I think there is value to measuring the overall amount of time from the initiation to the issuance, because that's really what the parties or the stakeholders are to care about, right? They don't really, most people are not really going to care that it took an administrative judge or an ALJ a certain amount of time to get to a hearing. They want to get their decision. And I think it's possible, as this recommendation does, to measure subcomponents of time as well, other issues as well. But I think it would be really useful to have an overall measure to start out with.
The only point is don't confuse the two. And I think they're confused now. And to go back to the highest point, I don't think, I would not use the word average. I mean, average at first blush sounds like, well, it's just a general term, but it actually means something. It's the mean. It's a measure of central tendency as opposed to the median. I don't think the recommendation has to specify which one is right unless ACUS has a position on that. So just, time itself as a summary measure.
Anybody else on this one?
Just wanted to go back to
Yes.
Catherine's point. I don't know if there's kind of specific language that maybe, or where you think in this list, because it sounds like you're suggesting, and I tend to agree, that there should be kind of another measure here separate from E to account for kind of the entire time it's taking. Do you think that should go like before E, or any language I would be grateful for?
I mean, that is partly my bias because MSPB does in fact measure most things that way. But we also measure, subunits. I guess if it makes sense to me to either start with that and then do the smaller portions of time underneath it, or else vice versa, to, organize it by what happens first and then all the way to the end. So like I notice here, like there's a average time it takes for an adjudicator to commence and complete a hearing. It seems like it's not quite in the order of operations that you would actually be doing these things.
Well, one possibility is to say the time it takes to complete the decisional process, which I think goes back to what Susan was saying, was using the word process. And then you could break it down from there, and maybe committee on style, Leah, could reorder things in a way that seems more logical. I hear what you're saying, Catherine, in terms of we go writing the decision before we've had the hearing. Anybody else on this chunk of this list? Okay, I will note that we have added at the bottom, I think this is something Leah was referencing earlier with regard to Jeff's concern that we flagged at the outset. This language is suggested to address that concern about appellate offices being included overtly. So if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I guess I would just add on that. I don't know what form the different appellate office reviews take at MSPB. They issue their own separate decisions. So it's not just review, it also includes issuance.
So you would say issue?
I guess it depends. So not knowing how the other agencies work, this would raise a question in my mind of what completing the review process looks like. Is there a product at the end, or do they just review, and then if you don't act, does that mean everything is okay?
Okay. Jeremy?
Yeah, I think agencies differ, especially when you have discretionary review, where an appellate body may complete its decisional process without issuing a decision. Do you think something like E, where it's the time it takes to complete the decisional process, would capture any hearing level process and any appellate process?
I think that's probably very agency dependent.
So E would say, would we have to be explicit there, the time it takes for an adjudication office, both, you know, I don't know, somehow clarify that we mean everything, even though it's defined
Or
to
it's like
complete.
the time it takes for an office to complete whatever process it's assigned with.
Whatever adjudication process.
Yeah. Yeah, whether it's a hearing level process, in which case.
Here or a review.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe committee on staff can work on that, but hi,
Yeah.
you have an idea, I bet.
Well, yeah, and then I wasn't sure. Took me a minute. I think that something like MSPB, where they can either review or they can issue directly, I think would be captured, right, by whether they happen to fit into F, right, review the case file and issue, and they would also fit into I, you know, in terms of their review, right? EOC just did the reviews. So I think that takes, to Catherine, to your point, I think it might be different bullets that will apply to the same agency. I'm looking at this, and I do think Committee on Styles should look at this, but I don't think it's a bad idea to have the thing E, which is clearly everything, just so long as people understand that the things underneath it, you know, are components. Yes, exactly. That does it. Right. And that, I think, just makes it more clear for what we've been trying to say. So,
Thank you, Russell.
One other point I made, and I just want to raise it again, maybe people want to reject it. Whether or not the recommendation should call for a differentiation for case types. The time it takes for process all cases as opposed to different kinds of cases could vary. And I would think policymakers would want to know that. And I suggested some language in there somehow or other. I mean, I think it's just a parenthetical by case, comma, by case type, comma. I offer as a suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's where it would have to go, Leah. I agree. It's a good spot. Anybody else on this? Committee on style, clean it up. We'll reorder it. Okay, at the end here, we have language that Russell suggested. You want to speak to that, Russell, a little bit? or-
I don't think we want to leave the inference that everything an agency wants to know is automatically going to be captured by this particular data set here. That's all. It's
Yeah.
I mean, my experience is sometimes you have to take specific inquiries to answer specific questions, and it can't just come from surveys and questionnaires. They have to be sometimes specific targeted research projects to identify specific questions. I don't suggest we have to go into what the questions are, but just a recognition that once you get the data set from recommendation one, you're not going to necessarily have everything you'll ever need.
Yeah.
To make policy.
Any thoughts on this added line? Further thoughts?
And that's the point in two of the language I suggest adding, which is shown
Mhm.
there, so I don't repeat myself.
Okay, we'll move to 2. This is the language Russell's referring, I think. The 1 and 2, the first 90 to 91. Is that Russell's comment? I think it is.
Yes, I think that's a related comment,
Yes.
too,
Yep.
but I just want to be clear that we're adopting this language.
Unless I hear otherwise.
yeah, I think we do, and I think it needs to be F, that's all. So that, you know what I mean, right? I think
Part of the list.
out of the list, just, yeah. Not part of the sub list. It's a new F.
The F, Okay. So 2, this is the language I think you're talking about here, Russell, that you've added. That you would propose adding to
I mean,
91.
it just
90.
reinforces the point.
Yep.
It's now F or whatever it is under 1.
Yep. Any thoughts here on this?
Oops.
Hi, yeah, no, go ahead.
I think this is good. I think the only thing is I'm not sure, Russell, that we need the word useful. I mean,
Agree.
you know, feedback could be sought fun.
Yeah.
Good.
So there's
Okay.
actually a couple different
Yeah,
edits in this one.
competing
Yeah.
edits.
So, well, I mean, they could be together, but
It can be reconciled.
yes, I think Russell's comment is definitely right here, right? To
Uh-huh.
just kind of add more instead of just saying feedback. And then Amy had a comment about really being clear that we're talking about seeking assessments and feedback on the organization, management, operation of these offices, and then saying, like, kind of breaking up the sentence, feedback could be sought from, and listing the types of stakeholders. So just to
I see. Yep. Amy, did you have anything further that you
No,
wanted to
I-
add to that, or is that pretty much covers it?
That covers
Good.
it.
Great. Anything further on to then? I think. Good to go. Jack. Our list, semicolons and commas. Okay, we got that.
I can make that change after. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Paragraph 3, recommendation 3.
Although at 97, that's just the same point we were
Same
talking
thing.
about above.
Yep. Yep. Do we want to vote on necessary or when possible on 97? I like as necessary myself, but anybody have a strong feeling on that? And then our list, this is Jeff. Again, raising the concern about appellate bodies, and there are edits here to try to address that. So we say plural. I think this was, he suggested a pluralized version. So that's what's represented here. Placement of adjudication offices within the broader hierarchy so that it's clear we're not excluding. We're not focusing on one and not the other. We mean both. B, I don't think we need to choose, given that we've said we're going to put determine at the outset, head of the list. So determining and then our list. Anything on the list? Okay, let's go to 4 then. Recommendation 4, there's an edit here from Russell.
Is anyone else having trouble seeing? It's off to the side of the screen for me. I don't know if it's me or if it's.
Leah, can we?
Yeah. What side is what's happening?
Some of the text on the that you're sharing is cut off on the left side of my screen. I don't know if anyone else. Maybe it's my computer because of my. You know what I'll do? Never mind. I'm just going to move it over to my other monitor. Maybe that'll be
Okay.
better. No,
Is anybody else having an issue with that?
it's still off to the
Everybody
left side.
see?
I'm not having an issue, and I definitely don't want it pulled in more because I can see it right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
we
gonna
want
say
it
the
bigger.
only option is to zoom out.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry then. Just go ahead. It's me.
Anything on 4? Russell's edit seems fine to me. Anybody have anything on 4? We're talking now about management and who's going to be responsible for managing these offices. We have an edit from Jeff in I, very last item on the list. Strong feelings from anybody. We can move on to 5. Six. Susan,
Couldn't find my, so I'm doing high five.
that's fine. That works. It got my attention. Susan,
Okay.
it's fine.
Sorry, I'm just
Perfect.
trying to
All
be
right,
creative.
6.
So this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, which is, you know, the heads of adjudication offices, some statutory and I'm sure some regulatory functions, right, would designate certain heads of
Mhm.
adjudication offices. Like for instance, at MSPB, all the adjudicators report ultimately to the chairman. At the FLRA, they don't report to the chairman because it's a separate function under statute. So I don't know if you want to tweak that or clarify that. Hit maybe something like where statutorily or regulatorily appropriate, da 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 da.
Jack.
This is on a different subject, so if
Okay, all right,
yeah.
I'll hold. Yeah, thank you.
What if we said something like unless otherwise like designated by statute or regulation at the beginning?
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, because appropriate seemed a little, wasn't clear. Mhm.
Catherine, is it on this?
It is on this.
Great.
My
Go
question
ahead.
is what directly means. I mean, I would interpret that as a first level supervisor, but I'm not sure that that's what this means, given that there's previous discussion about levels of management of an agency, of a particular adjudication office.
I read it as, I'll just use our scheme, our chief judge would report directly to the agency head or deputy. I hear it would be an agency head. So it'd be, you know, direct first line.
I do have something small on this. No. I would change regulation to rule only because you could have, some of these are rules of agency organization and they're not going to be published as regulations the way you think about regulations.
Thanks, Jack. Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually have 2 things now. One is we
Yep.
have an unless and an unless. So this
Yep,
made
I
it
was gonna
sound
flag that
like
too, but you're way ahead of me.
But the other thing that I'm a little concerned in terms of regulation or rule is, aren't we also sort of, even if by rule it goes somewhere else, the agency can change that rule. And if part of what we're doing is talking about best practice, you know, basically unless otherwise prohibited or designated at the end, the heads should report to the agency head unless otherwise designated by statute or doing so would adversely affect.
Unless other, yeah, put the unless, so then we get rid of the extra unless.
Yeah, yeah. And then so, because that is our recommendation. I don't know about whether report to or report directly to. I'm not sure about the difference of that. So, whoever raised that might want to explain that. I think it might have been Catherine, someone else.
It was me, but I don't think it's an important point in this context. So.
Yeah, so I think the heads of issue report to, I think you can, well,
You should get rid of directly, is that what you're?
I don't know that you need it. I mean, right? The heads of issue report to the agency head or there unless otherwise done without or doing so would adversely affect.
Is it clear that we mean? I don't know. I'm gonna just play devil's advocate that we don't mean like just give a report. We mean actually report.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't we just keep directly in there? Because that is a sort of like direct report feeling. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just as a clarification, you know, if you have an administrative law judge versus an administrative judge, that's going to make a difference in the reporting structure.
Yeah. Okay, Jack, you had something else on this one? Yeah.
Actually, something I'm sorry about this, but I wanted to go back to 4, management and resources, number 4.
Okay.
For something pretty small, but I think it's
Yep.
consistent with what we've been concerned about the including appellate offices. Instead of saying within an adjudication office, how about within their adjudication offices?
This is on line 111.
No, I'm sorry. Well, let me look. Yeah, within their within their adjudication offices. I mean, I think that's consistent with what we've been doing, right? In terms of trying to make it, apply to both trial level and appellate. Am I on the right track on that?
We could also say each or each of their.
Each of their, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I think I'm always in favor of fewer words, but
Yeah. I'm not sure the to be works anymore. Might have to be who will be responsible or who are responsible, who are responsible. Yeah.
Who are?
Yeah. Okay. Amy?
I wanted, if we're done with 4, I was gonna go back to 6
Okay.
and
All
5.
right. Let's
That's
hold
one thing.
on. Let's hold on that. 4. Anybody have anything on 4 before we go back to 6? Jeff would be very happy that you're keeping his thoughts in mind here. Okay, we'll go back to 6 and Amy.
So the only thing I wanted to flag when you're talking about who adjudication officers should report directly to is, might want to keep constitutional issues, Arthrex type issues. I don't know, I'm not sure how this would play into this or not, but there may be some constitutional reasons for requiring judges, especially appellate judges, to report directly to the agency head. But I agree that that doesn't work for ALJs. Appointments clause is what I'm talking about.
Any thoughts for language that you would, or anybody have any thoughts on that? Hi.
I guess I'd be curious to hear from Jennifer.
Mhm.
What is the issue that is being addressed here? Like, do we have adjudication offices that don't report to an agency head? I mean,
Yep.
Yeah,
Amy.
it's a good question. I was about to actually chime in, but thank you for
Great.
asking it. I think in the case studies, not necessarily, but what comes to mind is, for an example, a situation, I guess taking like a recent reorganization example, where, for example, an agency reorganizes generally and maybe creates like an assistant secretary for enforcement, or like anti-fraud, and then places an adjudication office under that broader division that, right, combines enforcement and other sort of non-adjudicatory functions, so that then so that's what I think of mainly in terms of this recommendation, that then having the head of the adjudication office report to someone who's in charge of, say, like, again, enforcement, anti-fraud investigations, and then goes up to the agency head level, would seem to place, right, the adjudication office in a different posture than if the head of the adjudication office, whether that head is a director type person or an ALJ type person, right? It just sort of, it changes the reporting structure.
Okay.
So I guess from my perspective, that was like kind of the principal concern that I thought, could be useful to just share out. There may be other reasons, yeah, to think about this recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other thoughts on 6?
Yeah, I could add something real quick if it's helpful. I've
Sorry,
worked in,
Char
sorry.
Charles?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
Charles Yorty with the Department of Education. I've worked in 2 different offices of hearings and appeals in my career, at Interior and now at Education. At Interior, the Office of Hearings and Appeals was part of the Office of the Secretary. But at Education, it's part of the Office of Finance and Operations. And so the director of the Office of Hearings and Appeals, its direct supervisor is an SES, career SES in charge of finance and operations. So the office with our administrative law judges does not report to the head of the agency. And there's been discussion in the past, especially by the current director, about how that seems odd, that it's a weird fit, and that the office should probably be in the secretary's office. And we did a survey and found that most executive agencies' offices of hearings and appeals were within the office of the secretary, probably because it's the most natural fit. I've always also considered, though, that uh, I think the ALJs themselves prefer to create as much appearance of independence as possible. And at Interior, all of the administrative judges were delegated the authority of the secretary to make final agency decisions. But at Education, virtually all of their decisions are appealable to the secretary as a final level of review, and the secretary makes the final agency decision. So if they reorganized in a way that I think does make sense on paper and had the head of their office report directly to the secretary, I wonder if they would chafe at having the impression that their boss is reporting to the secretary, who is also effectively the the final reviewing tribunal, who is going to directly uh, interpret their decisions and in some cases reverse their decisions.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that, but it's just something that occurs to me as one of the main issues that they run into.
It's an interesting contrast. I personally would think that the doing so would adversely affect the integrity of the adjudication would cover the situation, the concern that you've raised about having that role report to the appellate body or the appellate person. So thanks for that. Okay, we're gonna move to 7. Have anything pre-submitted on this? So okay, let's move to 8. Aye.
So here's where I just want to get a piece of information that it said in the beginning. So in our performance metrics or expectations,
Hmm.
have we said anything as ACUS, and is it maybe in here in this quality assurance system about what we think about agencies putting numbers, metrics? We expect you to do X number, because I mean, so many agencies do that, and we can all see both why they do it, but also the problem with it. So I mean, this is really a question, I think, for Leah and Jeremy. What have we said about that as ACUS, if anything?
Yeah, it's in the timeliness recommendation, which is linked in the chat. Yeah, it encourages agencies to use data to develop reasonable goals and ensure that those goals or metrics do not impede decisional quality. So there's sort of a balancing there.
Okay. I mean, I just don't want us to write something in here, data-based performance metrics. So maybe in A, maybe let's just reference to that, just like you reference in B, the quality assurance, maybe let's just reference our timing recommendation, we did that balancing.
The only thing I would note is that refers only to productivity metrics, and certainly some agencies have developed metrics for, say, quality or other sorts of things. So I think 2023-7 gets you part of the way there, but may not encompass all the ways in which agencies might use metrics.
Okay, so I would just leave it to, I mean, it could even just be that, you know, in the preamble, we make it very clear sort of what we've done in other recommendations, and therefore if we're referencing them, you know, we're including that. I mean,
Sure.
or if there is another one that if you could just add described in the timing and in the, whatever the other one was, I don't know if it was quality or something else. You know, I don't have a strong feeling which way you do it, but since we've spent time in ACUS talking about that, I just think we should be able to reference and therefore rely on it.
Thank you. Anything else on this list? Let's go to 9. Um, 10. 10 we had Russell's concern about making it clear that, you know, we want electronic systems to be modernized, not just these 2 systems that we're flagging. I don't know if this edit accomplishes that. I don't, where is Russell still with us? Yes, Russell, any thoughts on that?
Oh, I just thought the way it was written, it sounded like, as
Yeah.
I said, you could ignore the others.
Yeah.
This is fine, it seems to me.
Great.
Makes the
Thank
point.
you. Thank you. Great.
Could I just wax philosophical about the last 2? As a general thought, I know a lot of agencies are strapped for cash, and these are recommendations. But when you say agencies should provide, you know, dedicated resources, IT resources, that's almost utopian. A lot of these smaller agencies are going to read this and go, "Oh yeah, we should do that. Give me the money." But you know, I don't disagree with what you've said. I just don't think it's really realistic.
Any other thoughts on that?
I put my,
Hi. Yep.
yeah, just to say, I think that's true. But this is one of the places where I think it's good if ACUS is a little utopian. No, really, so that's so that a high volume adjudication office, when it's going in and making its case in the agency's budget to say, you know, ACUS, to the extent we can get it out there, ACUS says we should have a dedicated resource, you know, such as, I don't know that they're going to get dedicated HR, but maybe dedicated to, you know what I mean? So that I want to agree with you and then say, so that's something we can do as ACUS.
Anybody else on that point? Or anything further on 10?
I do want to note that Susan is very good on all those other icons. I got the raise hand. I don't know if I can do all those others.
I
That raise-
can't find raise hand. I can find all sorts of other things, but
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
sorry.
No worries.
Susan, if you click react, at the lowest ones is raise hand or be right back.
You know what? I'll wait a second. Hang on.
Okay.
It is under all the other icons, which, you know.
I'm back. Other icons. I hear. Oh, there it is. Okay, never mind. Thank you. Learned something new today.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Jack. IT support.
My kids taught me that one.
I love it. Thank them for me.
Okay, why don't we take a short break before we jump into the last two groupings here? We're down to the last few, last 4 or 5. Catherine, before we break, go ahead.
Sorry, it occurred to me and maybe I missed it. Is there any discussion of AI in here? Because I know that's something that candidly I'm not a big fan of, but is a big talking point currently for this administration and for adjudication. And it seems to me, if there's a way to properly use it, it would go towards some of these, you know, issues that we're talking about quality and volume production.
Jennifer, do you have anything on that from the report? I don't think there's anything in the recommendation that I remember.
Yeah, I will admit AI, especially as we understand it now in terms of the generative AI, had not come up, and I don't think it is mentioned. There's sort of earlier iterations, like much, sort of algorithmic tools to
Right.
evaluate, right, quality, but not the kind of generative technology that is a buzz these days.
Bye.
So, Catherine, it's obviously that is a huge issue. What I would recommend, since obviously, as you just say, Jennifer, the report doesn't necessarily go into the sort of future-looking AI. As you all remember, we had a recommendation on AI. I think it was, I don't know if it was just the last one or the one before. And I think to the extent anyone asks us about this recommendation, this might be particularly ready, Nadine, in the larger group, right? And at the plenary to say,
Yep.
obviously AI is relevant, and we think agencies should look at our AI recommendations, and then apply them to here. I think that's probably our best bet, but I think, Catherine, raising it as something we need to be ready to respond to is very helpful.
Jeremy or Leah, any thoughts on that? I just thought I'd close that loop. No.
No, I
I
mean, it's-
agree with hi.
yeah, I mean, there's certainly ways that you could work AI in here. I mean, I can imagine how AI might be used effectively for the kind of data collection that we're talking about, instead of, say, requiring adjudicators to clock in and clock out and that kind of stuff, having sort of automated systems for collecting data. But I candidly don't know how much agencies are using those sorts of technologies.
Beyond the scope of the report. Okay. Thank you for raising it though, Catherine. As Hai said, it's definitely, if it came to mind for you, it will probably come to mind for people at the plenary.
Reluctantly came to mind for me, but yes.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay. Why don't we take our short break now, get back in 5 minutes or so, and then we can knock out the last bit of this, hopefully. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Thanks for being prompt. Let us start with recommendation 11. We have some suggestions here from Jeff and Russell. Jeff's is very minor. Russell's is a conforming. Russell, do you want to speak?
I think it could be withdrawn. I think the thing is captured it as we've rewritten it. I think you just take it out.
Okay. Thank you. Any thoughts on 11 and the list of items? Okay, we can move to 12. Again, this is Jeff's concern about capturing appellate offices. And I think using the plural does that here. Anything else on 12 and the list in 12? "13, there's definitely an improvement there. Oh, hi, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question for Jennifer on 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
How many agencies actually do this already, you know? I mean, not that I don't think it's a good idea, but I am. So Jennifer, did you find that there was some agencies that really were transparent with all of this stuff and others not, or? what do you-
Well, I mean, is there an agency that does every single one of these? I'm not sure. I do think there is quite a bit of variation. You know, most agencies have org charts. But in terms, especially in speaking with stakeholders, it was pretty interesting to hear how some stakeholder organizations seem to really have access to information about, for example, like with a given case, where a case might be, who in the agency a case might be, you know, and that information was generally available to claimants, whereas others certainly seemed, you know, less clear, and sort of the websites were less clear with respect to, or not just websites, just sort of other published information was certainly less clear. So there's not like a particular one that like fits every box, but you know, I do think, yeah, there was definitely variation. I think especially with respect to like some of those handbooks and manuals, right? Like some agencies really just disclose a lot of information in terms of the adjudicatory process and who does what and who's in charge of what, seem to have processes in place for updating that. Again, some of that may be a function of size and just like very large agencies that need to have a lot of internal guidance. And organization in order to kind of carry out the very high volume nature of their work.
Mhm. Just as a quick follow-up, because you know, I always think about how is this going to land on agencies? Are they going to say, "Oh yeah, great idea," versus "What are you smoking?" You know, because I can see the agencies don't even have updated descriptions of the positions responsible for forming, or they don't want to put out their internal hierarchy organizational chart. But again, back to my point of, I do think these are all useful things for transparency. Maybe worth a sentence or two in the preamble that transparency is actually a positive thing. So just at least have a sentence or two that makes the case. And then, as you know, if you're then trying to socialize this recommendation with agencies, to realize that this is something that might be pushback on. So you want to have a good cheat sheet. You want to have a good set of bullet points as to why this is worth it. So.
Thank you. That's
I'll
great.
just, I don't, and I'll note also that with respect to this list, you know, I think, for example, B through D or B and D, right, the descriptions of positions as well as explanations of office operation, those strike me as areas that in particular tend to have less transparency than, for example, again, like org charts or right, the manuals that address sort of, you know, case management, like from the outside looking in. So thank you, that's helpful.
Catherine, did you have your hand up?
I did. I think it probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that just maybe maintain current, you know, or up-to-date copies, because there's a lot of agencies, including mine, that have a lot of this information, but it is definitely not up to date.
Trying to think of how to work that in. Maybe Committee on Style can think about that to reflect that these, I mean, I hear what you're saying. It kind of goes without saying, but it doesn't hurt to say it. We can figure out a way to work that in. Leah? Yeah, okay. Great. 13, 14. 13 is a stylistic edit from Russell, which is a good one. Anything on 14, 13 or 14? $15, our last recommendation. Record time today. Shouldn't have said that. I jinxed it. 15. Okay. Hi.
Wait, it's a very short thing.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
It was reading this last one that made me think, wait, performance metrics, how incentive awards based on, and again, I don't think we need to reference what we've said before on this because we've done it a few times. But again, I think I'm just thinking about the plenary. I think we really want to be clear that we recognize these are complicated issues, performance metrics, etc. We've dealt with them in other recommendations, and all we're saying here is when agencies have developed those consistent with our other recommendations, this should be transparent, and good luck in getting this being made transparent, but whatever. It's a perfectly good aspirational, call. But again, I just wanted to explain there was actually this paragraph as well as some of the others that really was the red light, red flag for me in reading.
Anybody else? Catherine?
Just a question about 15B. Is there a specific concern about a production-based award as opposed to some other performance metric? And I could see maybe there's a question as to whether people are just pushing out tons of cases of low quality, but I wasn't sure if this was actually trying to capture that idea or something else.
So I will say this language, more or less verbatim, was taken from the timeliness recommendation. So I may have just copied over the production. So I'll definitely leave it to the committee to decide whether that should be production or otherwise. But since the conference, this is a touchy subject and the conference had already adopted language, wanted to go with what the conference was comfortable with before. So I think that that is a good point, and I do not know the answer. So.
Any thoughts on that in terms of, is that the only spot we say production metrics? Hi. Oh, can't hear you.
Usually I'm so good about undoing that.
Yes.
So again, thinking about plenary and people sort of grabbing on things, I think it might make sense to just say based on such metrics, right? They should disclose such metrics or expectations publicly, explain how they were developed. For those who are subject to performance appraisal, disclose how they use such measures to appraise employees' performance and whether employees are eligible for incentive awards based on how about such performance, because that's what A is about, such performance. And then again, be very ready in the plenary to say, we are not opining in this report as to whether they should have these performance metrics, whether they should get incentive awards. We're just saying that if they do it, they should be transparent about it. And I think that will help us at the plenary.
Thank you. Jeremy, did you want to weigh in?
Only that production there should have been performance based on what was the earlier recommendation. So I think it's
Fabulous. Hi, mind meld there. Great. Anything further? Okay. Anything else? I mean, I think that's a wrap until next time. Leah, anything we're missing? Anything we need to go back to?
Nope, I mean, we have a lot of committee on style edits that will be made, and we will send around the revised draft, obviously ahead of the next committee meeting, which is in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, 2 weeks, the 24th, same time.
I want to say this may be the best packaged, sort of put together recommendation that I've seen as a member of this committee over the years. Just from the get-go, it was very professionally done and close to ready to go fashion. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Yes, and to add on that, Nadine, I am assuming that if the second draft comes around and everyone is happy, you of course have the authority, right, to not have to hold a second meeting, isn't that
Yeah.
correct? So just want to say
But
that
we'll look at that. We'll see.
we'll look at that.
But yeah. I mean, there are a few things here. I think it just might be a really short meeting. But
That's right. Well, it could be really short
we'll see.
meeting.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, everybody's efforts and contributions are greatly appreciated. And we will give you back a lot of time here. And thank you to Jennifer for being here and answering our questions, Leah and Jeremy, everybody else. You guys are great. It's always good to see you and hear from you. So we will sign off. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Maybe.